Happy birthday. Happy birthday to my dad, Thomas F. O'Loughlin Jr., 101 years of age tomorrow. And we celebrate his life tonight here on McDuff Channel. My name's John O'Loughlin, and this is a little bit of a retrospective of my father's life. Wanted to really start off with a bang because I tried to last behind me, change in tune to the, well, that is part of the celebration. But now that the fireworks are over, I'll turn the special effects lights off. But that was fun. Yeah, that's right. Same birthday as your youngest, Marie. Isn't that nice? Well, wonderful. March 21st, an auspicious day, the first day of spring. And in most of the world, I think it started today, but tomorrow maybe. It's often considered to be the official beginning of spring. And, it's 1920, a long time ago. I thought I would give you a bit of the PowerPoint presentation that we did for my dad's birthday last year. We didn't actually do the PowerPoint because of all the sudden changes to our schedule, and we lost our hotel, we lost our bus, we lost everything, and so we didn't do the slideshow. So I thought I'd do that for you tonight, if I can once again remember how to share the screen here. See what I can do. Here we go. PowerPoint. Well, as I start this PowerPoint, I'm going to play some music behind it. Daniel Barenboim playing Beethoven Sonata Number 8, Opus 13, the Sonata Pathétique. This particular, the second movement, is very moving, and I think it's appropriate because, my dad introduced us to classical music as children, me and my sister Lisa, who is just a year younger than me. We were treated to the Tchaikovsky 1812 Overture, and that was kind of the way he gave us what now is called the Mozart effect. He got that into us early, and Beethoven came along right after that. Early adopter of Beethoven as a musical idol, and been away from Beethoven for many decades, but the LaRouche people, the Schiller Institute people, are bringing me back to Beethoven. So with no further ado, I'm going to play this beautiful music. Hold on a minute. I didn't want to hear the whole thing. What happened to my queued up one? Oh, this one. This is the one I want to hear. This is Horowitz. Somebody from my dad's generation. So happy birthday, McDuff. And see, I am sharing the screen. Yay. Andy would be so proud of me. Andy's got the night off, but Aaron's monitoring the channel for us. So here they are, the family of the immigrants. The older couple that are separated by children there in the middle. That's Ross Henry O'Loughlin, the paterfamilias, and Hannah Kelleher O'Loughlin. Those are my great-great-grandparents. The gentleman behind Hannah, the shorter one, is my great-grandfather, John J. O'Loughlin. He was a owner of a bar in Hartford, Connecticut, very close to the Colt manufacturing arms company there. And that's where he grew his family. The gentleman in kind of the center, above the children, so there's like four, there's a little boy and then a little girl and then an older boy and then the man behind the older boy, that is Tom Sr. That is Thomas Francis O'Loughlin Sr., who was John's first child and who is my grandfather. We called him Grandpa. And Grandpa married my grandmother, Margaret Lawrence, in 1919, I believe. And they were divorced 2 or 3 years later. And they had the one child, my father. And so here is my father, the child, standing next to Uncle John. Now, Uncle John's an important character in my father's story. I'll show you back here. He is on the far left, with a kind of a whimsical look, leaning inward. So he is Tom's brother, the second brother. And my grandfather, when he got his divorce, it was a traumatic thing. It was a change in his future where he kind of got cut out. And although he had a law degree, he never practiced law. He became a school teacher and a school principal and seems to have been fairly content with that. Like he had somehow settled things in a way that he could survive and not be looking over his shoulder all the time, because he had violated, probably, and I'm not sure, but it seems like he probably violated a family expectation when he married my grandmother, Margaret, or Peg, because she was from the poor side of town. She was not wealthy, and this match was not something that was going to advance the family fortunes. So the next in line became Uncle John, and Uncle John was kind of the mentor of my dad, as you can see the two of them together. And this picture has obviously been printed in 56, but it much older than that. But it had to have been about in the 20s. This is a closer up look at my dad, just to get the look in his eye. Looks a little skeptical to me. Okay, so he goes to public school until the 8th grade, and then some miracle happens and he gets into Loomis. And this is a clip from the graduation 1938. And you can see he was quite active in sports, but also some of the academic things like bridge club, chess club, and rifle team. Of course, he loved sports. Well, then he went to Harvard, and I have not put the Harvard materials on this slideshow. I'll do it another time. But okay, once again, I've moved into the next slide, and I think I'm going to just thank Daniel Barenboim for that, but didn't want to hear that particular piece of music right now. So let me just talk through the PowerPoint here. This picture is Rear Admiral C.S. Holland, Cecil S. Holland of the Royal Navy. And this is him presenting the British naval officer's sword to Midshipman Thomas F. O'Loughlin Jr. at the New York Yacht Club Thursday evening. That was February of 1943. I think it was February 13th or so. You can get this, by the way, at newspapers.com in the Hartford Courant. Midshipman O'Loughlin received the award for leadership and devotion to duty as regimental commander of the 10th class of the New York's Naval Midshipman School. That's referring to the U.S. Naval Reserve Midshipman School at Columbia University. And I wanted to talk about Admiral Holland for a minute. His story is amazing. As you can see, he looks kind of elderly in this picture. He was in World War I as well as World War II. And during World War II, he had the very, very weighty duty of serving as the captain of HMS Ark Royal. And Ark Royal was a very early aircraft carrier. And of course, there have been many Ark Royals, but the one in World War II was an aircraft carrier that existed at the beginning of the war. So, you know, it was not a modern, but it was effective. And it was part of what was called Force H in the Mediterranean. And this Force H, based in Gibraltar, had the duty of escorting supply ships to the Allied troops in Africa, in Malta, in the Mediterranean generally, wherever they were needed. So he was in constant action, constant convoy patrolling, but also at the very, very difficult position of being in charge of the assault on the French naval flotilla that was in a harbor there in North Africa, Mers something. And anyway, this was after Vichy, and so the Vichy French owned these naval ships. These were still, however, French naval officers and sailors that were still thinking of the British as friends. You know, France and Britain had been friends for a long time, and the idea of actually bombarding these rather helpless French ships was very, very terrible for Admiral Holland. Churchill finally ordered him to do it, and they sunk 2 or 3 French ships that were just stuck in the harbor there. Hundreds of lives lost, and a terrible emotional blow, I think, to Admiral Holland. He left the field after a couple of years of service and they told him, I think it was called battle fatigue or just plain exhaustion. So he was at the Admiralty serving in, more of a bureaucratic job at the time that my father graduated from the midshipman school in 1943. And so it was him. He had the duty of coming over here and, um, I guess, kind of passing a British sword to the leading midshipman of this midshipman class. You can see that my dad has the 4 stripes on his sleeve there, indicating he's the commander, the regimental commander. So taking that sword, and I can't help but stop and think for a second about, this is the sword that is in my library here, in the library we're calling the Thomas F. O'Loughlin Jr. Memorial Library. And this is a sword that he almost broke over his knee one day when my mother came home and saw him in desperately sad, saying that it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a thing. By that time, he was obviously disillusioned with the way things were going, and as we know, the idea that it was, a British Wall Street idea, this whole war. Well, I won't philosophize anymore on that. There he is, the young man, his midshipman graduation picture. And here is the Nashville. In July 43, that's about when he would have been there. He's probably even in that picture somewhere. There's MacArthur and General Kenny, the Air Force commander for the 7th Fleet. They worked together in doing all the planning and island hopping. And speaking of island hopping, there they are on an island, my dad to the left there smiling. And this was a very unique occasion where they actually had a chance to do some shore leave and play a little football. There he is. And it's a close-up of a picture. You can see he was bigger than anybody else, and just broad-shouldered and bull-necked, and kind of a George Webb of his day. Here he is with this is October the 20th of 1944, the Leyte invasion, the greatest naval engagement in history. And there he is with the binoculars looking out. And it certainly does imply to me that he's observing to see that things are going according to plan with all of those landing craft, probably looking at signals and other significant things for the operation. To his right is, I believe that's General Kenny again, and but then the person there that has a little splash of sunlight near his ear there, of course, with the trademark shades on, is General Douglas MacArthur, and that's the invasion. Well, the invasion went quite well in October of 1944, and the Army troops needed to be transported up to the next island to be Mindoro was the next one scheduled. And on the way to Mindoro, the kamikaze hit the ship. This is a close-up that I clipped from an official Army photo of the scene, and that's my dad looking over, apparently seeing the remains of that Japanese kamikaze plane sinking into the water. That's, I think, a fair assumption. There he is beginning his career in Washington with the FBI. Pretty young looking, happy, ready for a new adventure. and there's his wheels, and the guy could dress, Doesn't he look fine? And then along comes Johnny. There I am. And there's my beautiful mother, Libby. That's our house where we lived on Leyte Drive, and with my mother is my sweet little sister, Lisa. This is the propaganda picture. This is my dad taking a picture of me with a Loomis sweatshirt on and a football in my hand, indicating to Grandpa and all the folks back home that I was on track to be another football-playing Loomis graduate. Well, I finally got to Loomis, but it wasn't until 2019 with George Webb, and that was quite a trip. There's a candid of him with his initials on his apron and a little bitty apartment there in Washington. Rudy is our dog. One day, Grandpa showed up with this gray puppy named Rudy in a box. He's a Weimaraner, and Grandpa decided we needed a dog, so we got a dog. That's me and Lisa. There's another picture of yours truly, not very comfortable in that particular outfit. You can see the cars in the back with the fins on them. Oh, I mentioned my grandmother, Margaret Coakley. She was an amateur and would-be professional songwriter. She didn't have much luck with the publishing houses, but she did absolutely put her best effort into it. I do have the sheet music for this song and another song that I have. Sadly, a whole box of her music was one of the things taken when my house got broken into back a few years back. Lost a number of personal things that I think were intended to hurt me emotionally, but I got this beautiful song. It's a great song, and another song which I love, and I'll sing for you sometime. It's called "Be the Good Little Girl That You Are While I'm Gone," a song written during the war, of course. And there he is with his mother. And the gentleman behind the bar there is Frank Coakley. Of course, Margaret and Frank were married before the war. Frank became a pilot with the Army Air Force during flying in the China-Burma-India theater, meaning flying the hump. And somehow he was exposed to some bad chemicals while he was flying and developed emphysema. And that tragedy, cost him his ability to make a living after the war. He was pretty much confined to the bed. He could get up for a couple of hours. Just a wonderful, sweet man. A victim of whatever spooky stuff they were dumping in Burma or China or wherever he had to go. Secret stuff we still probably don't know. But, that's what they did. 1965, October, we see on the thing. So we have a precise month there for my dad at the World's Fair. The fair is officially closed at this point, but he had business there, and he has a bag in his hand. I don't know what's in that. That's me visiting the Elks. Both my great-grandfather, my grandpa, and my father were all members of BPO Elks. Lodge number 19, and I really would love to know if there's records of them. My great-grandfather was like the, whatever you call the head elk there for a while. I did put into this slideshow this little text, which I think, ties Richard Bissell to my father's demise. We're talking about Posh, the guy named, I forget his first name, Otto or something like that, Posh. And he is a colonel in the U.S. Army. He was he did all kinds of special stuff. He was the head of security for the Manhattan Project. He was the head of the Alsos Project, which was the team of scientists that went into Germany immediately after the ceasefire, before the regular troops went in, to scoop up all the scientists and scientific equipment and experiments and materials that they could, and particularly looking for the nuclear bomb making projects of the Nazis. So he did that, but also clearly he is an assassin. He's somebody that would do anything he was told. And so they actually really did create a health alteration committee, of which he was a member, along with Richard Bissell and Sheffield Edwards. And these guys are high-level CIA. And so for the crazy health attacks upon my father, I do associate these characters. And the Bissell association goes all the way back to Hartford Insurance Company. Yeah, one of my subscribers had sent me an article from the Washington Post about, let's see, who was it? Oh, it was about James Angleton, about James Jesus Angleton, and how he was friends with the poet Wallace Stevens, and he would visit Wallace Stevens, the one of the officers of the Hartford Fire Insurance Company, and my Uncle John worked for Wallace Stevens. So this brings James Jesus Angleton into the Hartford Fire Insurance Company inner circle, and one can only speculate that Angleton and Bissell, possibly the poet Stevens, who knows, may have, and with my Uncle John or without him, have kept an eye on my dad, followed him along, and perhaps tried to steer his course in life in many ways. Just a lovely picture of my dad, smiling, proud. That's his secretary. And I think that's General Anthus. I'm not sure which of the Saxa generals that is. I think it's General Anthus, giving him a certificate of service for, is that 20 years service? Maybe it is. Anyway, I just add this because look at the look on his face. He looks like he's proud. And he is, and that clearly is their office with the helicopters and other military items in the photo. Just a close-up of that same one I clipped out. There's his award for exceptionally meritorious service from March 62 to March 1971 with the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, J3 Saxa, as planning specialist. Mr. O'Loughlin's professional knowledge, management ability, analytical skill, and informed perception have enabled him to make major contributions to the increased effectiveness and capabilities of the U.S. defense program and the management and efficient use of defense resources. His objectivity, perception, and persuasiveness led to the adoption of improved methods, concepts, and programs. His distinguished contributions and dedicated service reflect most favorably upon himself, the Department of Defense, and the Federal Service, and I take pleasure in awarding to him the Secretary of Defense Meritorious Civilian Service Medal, signed Melvin R. Laird, the Secretary of Defense. And this is the letter from General Manner a year later, June 6, 1972, 1 year after my father's death. And General Manner is a brigadier general at that time. And notice he says he's Deputy Director for Operations, Counterinsurgency, and Special Activities, DOCSA, D-O-C-S-A. That's not exactly Saxa. And I wonder if that isn't actually a CIA designation. Usually like DDO is not a Pentagon thing. that is more of a CIA thing. So maybe Manor is seeing himself more as a CIA officer than as a Pentagon officer at this point. Anyway, we have discussed General Manor many times on the show, and I've written to him, invited him to tell me what he can about my dad's life, and sadly, no response. This is a dedication of a meeting that happened to his memory. Also came from General Manor. And there he is, the only really professional portrait I have of my dad. And this is a picture that I hadn't had. I had just found it maybe, a year ago, 2 years ago, I guess. But if you see the sense of confidence that's in this picture, and I don't know where it was taken, I wasn't there, but I do absolutely recognize the sense of everything's under control. Don't worry about anything. I got everything under control. He was just like, well, he was my father. What else is there to say? Well, let's spend a little time with the USS Nashville. The material I got down at the MacArthur Memorial is terrific, and I'll be putting that together for a different show one day. But tonight I've got some things that we can share together. I hope you enjoy them. The first one is, this I guess is for George Webb and for other people that are following the actual progress of General MacArthur's island hopping as he is on the Nashville during this 2 parts of the island hopping campaign, beginning at New Georgia and then following up as in New Guinea and then into the Philippines. So Colonel Rufus Buell Thompson made a video a few years ago. He's passed on now, but he was exact contemporary of my dad and actually boarded the Nashville at the same time in June of 1943 from San Francisco. And this officer explains, and I wish that this was longer, but it's only about 3 minutes long. But what he does is he shows you the islands and the actual route that the Nashville took during MacArthur's famous island hopping campaign. So I'm going to share this with you if you don't mind.
The ship.
Oops. Let's go back to the beginning.
I had over 2 years aboard the Nashville. It was a pleasure in serving, and it was really an extreme interesting thing to have MacArthur aboard. We left Hawaii, came down into the Solomons Islands. Now at that time, Guadalcanal had been taken. Our first major operation was supporting the landing of the 3rd Marine Division in Bougainville. The first operation was with General MacArthur aboard. We went into New Georgia. Then we gradually worked on over into New Guinea, down here in Milne Bay on the eastern coast of the New Guinea. And what MacArthur was doing was he was leapfrogging through the area. And they would bypass and leave Japanese troops in certain areas, cutting them off. We took MacArthur.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not playing. Hang on a second.
And then he debarked from the ship. And the next operation, we were heading for Mindoro out here in the western part of the Philippines. Well, as we went through the service.
All right, I'm afraid that you didn't see that, so I'm going to go back and play it again. I apologize. That's my fault. I was trying to do something on StreamYard here that I'm probably not qualified to do. All right, let's see if this won't play. Thank you for your indulgence as I... Okay, here we go.
It was a pleasure in serving, and it was really an extreme interesting thing to have MacArthur aboard. We left Hawaii, came down into the Solomons Islands. Now, at that time, Guadalcanal had been taken. Our first major operation was supporting the landing of the 3rd Marine Division in Bougainville. The first operation was with General MacArthur aboard. We went into New Georgia. Then we gradually worked on over into New Guinea, down here in Milne Bay, on the eastern coast of the New Guinea. And what MacArthur was doing was he was leapfrogging through the area. And they would bypass and leave Japanese troops in certain areas, cutting them off. We took MacArthur on into Leyte, and then he debarked from the ship. And the next operation, we were heading for Mindoro out here in the western part of the Philippines. Well, as we went through the Surigao Straits here, this is where we were hit by the kamikaze. We didn't see the ship, the plane, until he started diving at the ship. And the commanding general for the Morotai operation was moved from the Nashville over to, I think, the Phoenix. Then we were returned to Leyte, and all of my Marines wounded and killed were evacuated into Leyte. After we were repaired, we came back out. I had a new detachment. We came out, we came on up into the Philippines again. We went into Manila Bay. And at Manila Bay, we went ashore. We had the opportunity to go ashore and see the conditions of Manila. After that brief visit there, then we operated out of Subic Bay on up into all the other areas up in here, and then we returned to Subic Bay, and the war was declared over. I then left the ship and went back to the States.
Well, that's a account from Lieutenant Colonel, Marine Colonel Rufus Buell Thompson. I have pictures of my dad and Colonel Thompson together, which I'll show you one time. Sorry, I don't have everything at hand tonight, but I think that's a great introduction to people that want to study the actual island hopping that the Nashville did. Let's see now, what else can I show you? Well, let's see, stop screen share. So that brings me, hey, I'm back. Well, one of the great things my dad, his story is exploding. I mean, here we are. I actually have in my hand 4 books about my dad. It's amazing. We have TDY by Douglas Valentine. You got to read this book. It's about a mission to catch the CIA doing dope deals in Laos. And the guy that launched the mission was my dad. was McDuff. I and God bless Doug Valentine for surfacing, and this is stuff that we might never have known, but it weren't for Doug to reach out to George Webb. And now we have that great connection with Doug Valentine, who's appeared as my guest on the show a number of times, and just a fabulous historian of our period. We have Cassidy's Run, which I'm in the middle of reading in this show right now. And my dad then, in this case, having been just in the FBI at the beginning of the book, but then transferring over to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, where he is consulted on this nerve gas question. Fascinating. We have George Webb's fabulous book that he's just published in color version called Let's Call Him McDuff. And I have to say, I really love this book. George has done a fabulous job with it. He tells the story of how he and I met, and 4 years of us working together on so many of the important issues of today, in addition to trying to flesh out my dad's life. And my thesis of this whole effort is that by telling my dad's life, we can expose the crimes and the criminal actions that have been going on behind the scenes for so many years. That's right. 1995 at Amazon. Definitely good way to learn about my dad, a good way to support George Webb's work. And I think you just really enjoy the book. Well, I got one more to show you. This one is called Humble Heroes: How the USS Nashville CL-43 Fought World War II by Stephen George Buston. And this book has got some wonderful stuff in it. I'm going to read just one little paragraph about what happened after the kamikaze raid. This is on page 140. Okay, so imagine that the ship has just been hit by a kamikaze, and gasoline and bodies and everything are flying everywhere. And I'll pick up the text here. Incredibly, the crew responded instantly and without any thought of personal safety, as men of all ranks and divisions raced to help the wounded and dying and fight the fires ravaging the ship. In roughly 90 seconds, the fog fighting equipment was manned on the scene. 15 hoses were on the scene topside in less than 5 minutes. Fires on all decks were contained in less than 10 minutes and were completely extinguished in less than 20 minutes, a remarkable achievement amid massive death, burning flesh, body parts, and exploding ammunition. Without a doubt, according to the official U.S. Navy reports, the ship itself was saved by the heroics of her crew. Sadly, many of the crew could not be saved. And that's where I think this all brings us home, is what do we owe to them, to the crew that could not be saved, to the survivors of them? What do we owe to the people whose lives were altered because of the death of a loved one in the war? A war to preserve our nation. What are we supposed to do if not tell their stories, respect their sacrifice, and do our very, very best to be sure that it never happens again? I'm going to try this one more time. All right, here's a short little video that's made about the book Humble Heroes, and you'll see my dad in a number of the photographs. There he is in the middle. On the left. In the middle on the bottom. That was the first time the ship was hit. Not a kamikaze, a bomb. There's that picture of my dad. And there's the damage from the kamikaze. 133 men killed, 190 wounded. There's the departed sailors and Marines. All right, so there, another video that has the Nashville in it. Oops. Sorry, guys.
Enterprise and sister ship Hornet squared off against the firepower of 4 enemy carriers in the bloody Battle of Santa Cruz.
Found it. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Well, let's see. It's 8:57, and probably that's enough for tonight. I awfully humbled to be, here tonight with you guys. Thank you so much for being part of, my support group. I feel a lot of times I put this stuff out there, and you know, you don't know what's going to happen when you share things from the heart, things from your family, things from your life. You don't know what's going to happen, but I feel very, very safe and honored with you guys, the people that have been with me now for a couple of years, and the new folks that are just picking up on my dad's story. It's fabulous to have you all with me, and each and every one of you. I say thank you, and we'll keep doing the right thing. That's what we do. We are doing our best to follow in the footsteps of that great generation and all the great people before it that have given us the freedoms we have. And we will fight to retain our freedoms forever. That's a promise. Good night.